Hello, and today I'm going to outline a case as to why I'm almost certain law enforcement was on to Richard Allen in 2019, but didn't necessarily know who he was. Why do I say that? Well, this is a complex and twisted tale I'm about to tell, so please follow with me because there may be more than one part to this video. Let's get started.
Directly to the killer who may be in this room. We believe you are hiding in plain sight.
Bingo. They got that right.
For more than 2 years, you never thought we would shift gears to a different investigative strategy, but we have.
They most certainly did. And during the same press conference, they also asked people for their help identifying somebody who parked at the CPS welfare building. And unfortunately for Doug Carter, he stated the wrong date during that press conference, February 14th, as opposed to February 13th, which is what he meant to say.
We likely have interviewed you.
Bingo. They got that right too. Richard Allen came forward shortly after the murders and spoke with Dan Doolin, whom, as we know, jotted down all of the information that Allen gave him that day about his description, what time he was there, and what he was doing.
Or someone close to you. We know that this is about power to you. And you want to know what we know. And one day, you will.
Remember, they had cell phone data at this point, and it was at this point they probably figured out that their main suspect and that investigative switch to a different strategy involved knowing somebody whose cell phone data put them at the crime scene or near the crime scene during the time of the girls' murders, and they vetted all of that information to the best of their ability. But here's the problem. At this very same press conference, they also reveal the picture of suspect number 2, who, as opposed to suspect picture number 1, which looked an awful lot like Richard Allen, suspect photo number 2 looked nothing like him really for the most part. Now, I know we can debate that all day long, but in general, I'm going to disagree that it looked like him just because they made it clear that they were looking for somebody who was much younger during that press conference. But I digress. The reason I believe that was the case is probably because sketch number 2 was the person that they thought was the Anthony Schatz photograph. And by that time, believe it or not, they still probably hadn't identified that that wasn't a real person, or if they had, they just thought that it was somebody younger.
A question to you. What will those closest to you think of when they find out that you brutally murdered 2 little girls? 2 children. Only a coward would do such a thing.
They really seem to be harping on the family element. There's something about it that says, what will those closest to you do? And he's angry, almost as if he knows who this is, or knows this is a local family person. He even states that this person is either from Delphi, works in Delphi, or is near Delphi. They are absolutely, at this point, on to the profile or to knowing that it's Richard Allen or somebody that matches those similar traits or descriptions, or at the very least knows this was the person that parked at the CPS building. But the problem is this. Even with all of the cell phone data in the world, which I'm sure at that point would have been close to enough to get a warrant, it might not have been enough to get a warrant. Clearly, we know that based on Fox 59 information here, it says, according to the probable cause affidavit supporting Allen's arrest, which was filed this past October 27th, investigators reviewing prior tips encountered a tip narrative from an officer who interviewed Richard M. Allen in 2017. Now, for whatever reason, even if they had known it was Allen in 2019, they didn't have enough to search his home yet. This was the linchpin. Now, we can debate all day long whether there was another tip that led them to this tip narrative, etc., that allowed them to get that warrant, but something happened in 2022 near the end of the year that allowed them to get that tip narrative. We've discussed whether or not it's Keegan Kline providing information or whether or not that was related to the Wabash River search, and I've even wondered, is the reason that they weren't able to make the link or get an arrest warrant was because Richard Allen potentially used some sort of a burner cell phone or burner device to communicate with the girls that day and tossed that phone in the Wabash River, or even had somebody else dispose of it for him. Let's read the rest of this story by Fox 59. It says, the PC probable cause does not explain why that tip narrative was not reviewed until just days or weeks before Allen's arrest this fall. Sources indicate that a clerical error led to the mislabeling of the tip narrative in the case database, eventually leading to the reveal of the document during a recent typical file review. And here's where it gets messy. The FBI does not like that information floating around. It says, quote, the Indianapolis office of the FBI, which lent agents and technical expertise during the early days of the investigation, issued the following statement today. Quote, as stated in the past, this is a complex multi-agency investigation. The implication that an alleged clerical error by an FBI employee caused years of delay in identifying this defendant is misleading. Now, they don't flat out deny this, they call it misleading. So there's some sort of miscommunication or misunderstanding between these law enforcement agencies where clearly the other was pointing fingers back and forth at the other one in some manner. It says, our review of the matter shows FBI employees correctly followed established procedures. Sources indicate during the early days of the investigation, dozens of law enforcement personnel and volunteers answered a tip line and sifted through the first of more than 72,000 tips that were gradually received in this case. There is no indication at this time of how such a substantial tip regarding a middle-aged man in his clothes that matched the clothes worn by the killer on the bridge that day did not receive heightened attention or further inquiry for more than 5 years. And again, remember, even if they suspected Allen or suspected or knew without knowing it was Allen that it was the person that parked at the CPS building that day, that doesn't mean there was enough to get a warrant. So something had to trigger the warrant. My question to all of you watching this video is, what was that thing that was the linchpin to finally push them over the edge to get that warrant that caused them to go back into the tip narrative and review those old tips that led to Allen? Thanks for watching. I have another video coming up shortly.